Okay, so as they say, here we go again. Anybody who's been with me for a while, anybody who's read the blog over the years, or who's looked at any of the previous presentations on this relatively new channel will know that I'm absolutely obsessed with using verifiable data, because I want people to be able to double check everything that I tell them, double check my numbers, do whatever they need to do to come to the realization that I did decades back, which in a nutshell, and I know I'm repeating myself for the umpteenth time, but it's basically, if you bet randomly against random outcomes, then you are doomed to fail. If you bet strategically, clinically, carefully, consistently, soberly against random outcomes with a strategy which has a wide betting spread and a honking great bankroll behind it, then you have a very, very good chance indeed of walking away from a casino table game with profit. And in this particular instance, what I've done is I've taken data from Brandon O'Brien's seagoing adventures with blackjack, mostly blackjack, because I think Texas Hold'em is a scandal, and baccarat doesn't seem to interest him very much, so that's fair enough. But I've taken the data from the most recent blackjack thing that he put up on his channel on YouTube, and I've plugged in the actual outcomes as they occurred. And on the left hand side, I don't think it takes much to figure out what everything means, but I'll go through it briefly. P is player, so it's a player win. D is dealer. N, it means no, it just means that a double down didn't work. And the reason that I use a letter rather than a number is, well, for one thing, it looks prettier, but it's also consistent with the general format up and down that column. W is a wash, or a push, if you like, but I can't use P because that's already been used for player. Y, down the bottom there, line 43, is yes, which means a successful double down. And B is blackjack. I might prefer to use natural, but that begins with N, and N is already taken by no. So anyway, so that's how it works. Nothing terribly cerebral or complicated about that. Now, I've also tried my best on the left-hand side where it says left-hand bet. In this particular instance, those are Brandon's bets. The outcomes are what mostly matters to me, but his bets are important, and I've tried to be as accurate as I possibly can in the numbers that I put in that column. But it is difficult because the angle that he shoots his videos at is not great for when he fails to announce his bet, which is quite often. And obviously it's his channel, so he can do things however he wants. That's not a criticism, it's just a statement of fact. When he announces his bet, then I'm fine. If he fails to do so, which is often, then I just have to guess and hope for the best. One thing I'm a little bit puzzled about is that from the video that he put up, and it's actually a bunch strung together, I think. I don't know how far apart the sessions were, but it doesn't seem to be one continuous session. He seems to have lost a lot more than he's suggesting. It could be that I've made some serious mistakes in his bet values, and if that's so, then I apologize. But essentially what we're seeing here is we're seeing a series of blackjack misadventures where he lost 34 more bets than he won, which amounts to a house edge, an actual value, if you prefer, of almost 23%, 22.8, which you can see at A7 in this particular thing that's in front of you right now. And that is punishing. It's absolutely horrible. Now, up here by the min and max in the top left. I've put 20 here, and that's because that was Jason's. Sorry, Jason. Sorry, I did something with Jason Bulkey a while ago, so I'm obviously a little confused. But never mind. Excuse me. I put up Brandon's spread. He spread only, I think, once he went as high as 500. Most of the time he was diddling around at much lower values than that. But the point is that with a spread as narrow as 1 to 20, then expectation or actual value was 22.8, and Brandon lost 23.1% of his total action. The action was 17,750 over the course of those hands. I think I've got that right. Maybe a little bit more. No, he lost a little bit less. This is something that I tend to do all the time. I copy over the information from one spreadsheet to the next, and then discover that, there we go, he actually lost even more by the time I added all that together. But it's not a great situation at all. He got absolutely slaughtered, or wrecked, as Vegas Matt likes to say. Apologies for the slight mistake there, but I don't think it hurts for me to demonstrate that when I find my mistakes, I fix them. What's happening here? I've obviously screwed up here too. Really, what I should be doing is starting again with this, but I'm not inclined to do that because my fallibility is part of my charm, right? Anyway. He should have lost 22.8% of his action, but in fact he lost 25.1%, and that's you're not going to get it exactly every time. But he was basically betting randomly. Now this next lot here is a version of pattern betting. It's not quite as sophisticated as the strategy itself, but I needed to create an algorithm which would play it for me. And so it's as good as I can get it without spending the next 10 years of my life tweaking and fiddling and trying to get it exactly right. So forgive me on that. But let's do something here. Let's say we don't want to do 1 to 20 because we know that's stupid. I mean, that's way too narrow a spread. Keeping in mind, of course, that the vast majority of players don't even get to 1 to 20. They wouldn't even think of it. I mean, like your $5 better, punter, whatever, wouldn't dream of betting $100 on a hand. Just not going to happen. But this is not addressed to your average punter. This is addressed to the 1% of 1% of all players who actually give a damn about the numbers underpinning games of chance and want to beat them regardless. So let's increase that to 200, okay? When we do that, we see a vast improvement in the situation in this column. It's still a loss. It's a considerable loss. You'll see that it says up here last, and that's saying that when Brandon stopped playing and he walked away a loser, when he stopped playing, there was still nearly 25,000 to be recovered, but there were no more hands left. There was no more data for me to plug in. So that's 5 maximum bet units. Not great. Okay, 1 to 200 is still inadequate. So let's change that to 500. And then what we see is a change in the story. Okay, we see a profit. Not great, but we see the actual value of almost minus 23% being tossed out, flipped in favor of a very, very, very tiny player edge of 1.2%. Now, a couple of things that I have to say about that here. One is that there's absolutely no way that if I'd been sitting where Brandon was sitting through these sessions, no way would I have kept playing against some of the crap that was coming at him. I mean, let's go slowly down the data that's available here. We got to a -5 there, but you go -3, -2, -5, and this is consecutive losses, right? -6, -7, -10, you know. And what is really, really frustrating about watching Brandon play, and it's his money, his business, his channel, no criticism, I'm just saying this is not what I would do. But he had lots of opportunity to turn his game around, because every time you see a double win or a triple win, and a lot of the time just a single win, he could have made his money back. But he just wasn't interested. He wasn't relating any of his bets to the depth of the hole that he was in. He was just sort of throwing money out there in a kind of a willy-nilly fashion, sometimes almost in a panic. He had that 1/500 bet that I mentioned. Where is that? It's up here somewhere. And he caught a blackjack, which is great, you know, wonderful. And that's the time to get a natural, is when you have a sudden urge to fling out. Here it is up here, 500, which was his biggest bet, and he caught a natural. But even then, he didn't exploit the situation. He just dropped back down to 200. That was a time to push. That was a time to press. But no, he didn't want to do that, and so he ended up, at least according to my numbers, 5,350 in deep shit. So anyway, the ideal spread, as far as I'm concerned, is 1 to 1,000, and so let's give that a go and see what we would get. Not much difference. Once you get up to a really wide spread, put 2,000 in there, then you start to see some serious dents being made. What happens, of course, when you put the 2,000 in, you don't win very much more money, but you don't have to risk as much, because the total action, as you can see, went down there, and in response, or as a result of that, the win percentage, instead of being -22.8, was +4.3. And that just means that reduced risk, reduced danger, reduced hazard, blah, 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 you know. So that's basically how it is. Now, let me obviously make something clear, because there's going to be people jumping all over me and saying, well, you can't bet 1 to 2, that. No, you can't at one table. But if you're in Las Vegas, for instance, or in any really large gambling area like Atlantic City or Macau or Singapore or wherever, there are tables to suit all pockets, right? So what you have to do is you have to think of each series of bets as a sequence which does not end, or a battle, a skirmish, an encounter, whatever you want to call it, a project, an operation, which does not end until you've got money in the bank. So if you hit the table limit, like if you start off at $25, then probably the table limit is going to be 500. Okay? Now, the people who trash martingales all the time say, yeah, well, when you get to 500, then you're stuck because you can't bet anymore. Well, that's absolute bullshit. What you do in that situation is you walk away from the table. You know, if your next bet is higher than the table limit and you can't get away with bumping it up, the dealer's too quick to stop you, or the pit boss steps in and stops you, just pick up your stuff and go somewhere where you can make the necessary next bet without hassle, without difficulty. It's been possible through all the years that I lived and played in Nevada, and it was the essence of what I did. I have said many times I did not make a multi-zero fortune betting at games of chance, because I had a job to do, I had a life to live, I had a situation where my interest in what happened in casinos was not shared by the entire family. So, you know, I basically had to sort of get in the time when I could. But I was a consistent, steady winner, and I just moved up the ladder. If I started at Sharky's, the little tin pot casino in the little town where I lived, and I hit the table limit, which was nothing much. It was like, I don't know, you could go from, I think, $2 to 200 maybe. If I had to bet higher than the 200, I'd just sort of say, okay, nice to see you guys, thanks a lot. Chuck a little tip onto the table for the dealer, and off I'd go to, to the slightly more salubrious other casino in town. And I would turn the sequence around there, and I'd be perfectly happy. Probably start playing again at their tables, which were at that time were $5 to 300. And again, if I hit the 300 limit, then that would be a note made in the notebook in my back pocket, or one of the little scraps of cardboard that I kept in my pocket, tucked away to be used when I got up to State Line, Lake Tahoe, or to Reno to play on. None of these little sequences, none of these series of outcomes is resolved until there's money in the bankroll and everything is back to green. That's how it works. This is how you play the game if you want to win consistently. Now, just to illustrate this point a little bit further, I'm going to go to BOB at Sea, and what this is here is two other versions of progressive betting. This one is the simple-minded martingale, okay, which makes it 6,000, 7,000, or 1.8% against the negative expectation, and obviously we're betting against exactly the same outcomes throughout. Okay, so that's this is the brainless martingale that everybody thinks of. It's double, 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 double until you go nuts. Over here is a different story. This is another variation on pattern betting, the way that I play it, but it's a little bit more aggressive than the way I generally do it. So again, if we go back to Brandon's 20 over here, neither one of those gets anywhere. Look at that. Absolute horror story. And this is what the casinos expect of you. They expect you to have a narrow spread, to panic, to bloody brown trouser your way through a stressful series of losses, consecutive losses, and to leave your money behind and go away and kid yourself that well, I got lots of free drinks and they gave me dinner and they gave me show tickets and they didn't charge me for my room. Well, all of those things added together, which you're thinking of as being free, complimentary, whatever, they're not. You pay for them at 10, 20, 100, 200, 500, 1,000 times their true value. If you come up to there again, and we sort of let's go for 100 this time, a little bit better, not much. But I hope you can see what I mean. I mean, as you widen the spread, you get more and more chance to actually make an impact. And you can see here at 200, so it's only 5,000 max, 25 and 5. This strategy here kicks ass. It shoots to 10.3%. Now, in this instance, what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, after 5 consecutive losses, I will take defensive action, but I will wait until 5 rather than what I prefer, which is 3 consecutive losses. But when I'm actually playing, what I tend to do is I tend to allow 5 when the bets are low and 3 when it starts to get really tough. And if the bets are into serious brown trouser territory, then I'll back off and start sort of like drawing in my horns and tightening my belt, if you like, at 2 consecutive losses. But this is the way it's done, and let's change this here to -3 to demonstrate what I'm talking about. At -3, we get into trouble. At -2, we change back into a positive situation. And all this says to us basically is that value needs to vary according to the size of the bet. But for this example, for this particular presentation, I've settled on -5 because it's kind of in the middle there. I mean, if we made it -50, then you know, still a great result. But this is saying, okay, no protective action taken whatsoever, and I'm not in favour of that, because it may be fine for the numbers, but it's not great for your psyche. You know, if you're having to go boom, 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 and constantly increasing the value of your bets, the size of your bets. So this is kind of a little bit of a compromise. And there's something to note here, is that when you reduce it like that, action goes up, and when action goes up, exposure goes up. So you know, that's just a fact of life. But here you've got the dark green is this one here, the light green is the simple-minded, everybody's idea of a martingale, and it ends up losing 12.3%, which is at least better than Brandon's performance, or indeed better than the actual value of the data set. The however many outcomes it was, you know, where Brandon lost 34 more bets than he won. I mean, good grief. So let's go to 500 here, and we see an improvement for the simpletons method, and we see, you know, sort of like this one maintaining its profit, which is decent, 5% instead of minus 23%, which is what we should have lost if we'd been playing the way that the casino wants us to play. That's how much money we would have been in the hole, you know. I mean, we'd be wiped out. And up here, oh, I should have explained this. Up here where it says indicated, all right? Indicated simply means taking the action here, the action figure here in BK, as it happens to be, BK7, and multiplying that by this horrendous negative figure over here. And that would say that the house would expect us, if we were flat betting or if we were random betting like Brandon, they would expect us to lose 51,000, okay? And over here, it's the same thing. It's 47,166. So the difference there is absolutely negligible. It doesn't, you know, doesn't count for much. Exposure here was 55,000. Exposure here was 54,000. Big difference, you know. It doesn't matter much. 1,000. Let's bump up to 1,000, which would be my preferred figure. Keeping in mind that you can't you can't always bet that at the same table. In fact, no, you can never bet that at the same table, because there'd be sort of like alarms going off, and pit bosses having heart attacks, and dealers kind of like telling you that you're mad, and other players running away in different directions and all that sort of stuff. But so as soon as you go to 1 to 1,000, 25 to 25,000, knowing that you know, you're going to hit a table limit, you have to go somewhere else. You hit another table limit, you go somewhere else, and blah 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 blah. But here you've got a situation where suddenly at 1 to 1,000, over here you stay at about the same level, plus about 7,000, 2.5%. Over here, note that the total action is reduced from the simpleton martingale. This is a smartingale, or a smarty marty as I'm forced to call it now, because of another guy's quicker use of smartingale. So a smarty marty is kind of what this is. This is the dumb marty, and you can see we're up to 7.1% and 18,000, an 18,000 win as compared to the loss, which should have been 58,000. And there you have it. I mean, all of these things are totally simple, totally number oriented, totally predictable, because in every single session that I go into, whether it's baccarat or whether it's a data set from roulette, from the 50, you know, from the 50-50 or the even money bets at roulette, or wherever it's from, or from craps, I always get the same result. I had a horror story of a time just yesterday or the day before, playing funny money baccarat against my favourite simulation from Baccarat Win Pro, because what I did was, instead of running away, which is what I prefer to do when things get really difficult, I like to just back off, you know, leave that shoe alone, start up another one later, pretending that I'm in the real world and I've walked away from a bad shoe, and I've gone somewhere to have maybe a cup of coffee or whatever, lunch, anything to allow me to kind of calm down, de-stress and all the rest of it, and then go back into the game at the same level. because wherever, whenever you walk away from a losing sequence, it's not over. It ain't over until that fat lady sings, and I'm always listening for the fat lady. That's my deal. And that reminds me, I really want to look up who first said it ain't over till the fat lady sings. I mean, who does it sound like to you? It kind of sounds a bit Damon Runyon. It sounds a bit sort of, I don't know who it sounds like really. Maybe Studs Terkel or somebody like that. But I will look it up and I will let you know if you don't already know. And if you do know, then by all means put it in comments below. But that's the story. Everything is about numbers. It may be boring. It may be unfun. It may take all the spirit and the excitement out of gambling. I'm not interested in gambling. I'm interested in playing to win. And I mean that absolutely sincerely. And what I'm trying to demonstrate with all of these presentations is that nobody has to lose the way that Brandon keeps losing, the way that Jason Balke keeps losing, the way that Steve Will Do It keeps losing, the way that everybody who's ever put up anything on blackjack or baccarat, they just throw their money away. It's incredible. I mean, I know there are lots of people who subscribe to these channels or who catch them very quickly who insist that all of these folks are not really playing with their own money. They're playing with casino money, and the minute they turn the camera off, they just push the chips back in, and or if they've got chips that they bought, they get their money back. Basically, what lots of people are saying is, no, this is crooked. This is Alexa, shut up. Yes, and I will drink water. Anyway, I'm running up to half an hour here, and I try to keep things a little bit tight. You wouldn't know that, but difficult for me to stop talking because I spend all my time at my desk, and the only person I can talk to is either Alexa or myself. And I'm not that interested in either of us, to be honest. So, this is what this is all about. You're providing me with entertainment and psychological boosts, and I hopefully am providing you with information that you can use, that you care about. If you're the 1 in 1,000 punters who's not a gambler but a player. And I'm never going to build up a huge audience of 400,000, 650,000, a million subscribers or whatever, because there's just not that many people who would ever go anywhere near a casino or would ever risk money, because there's a kind of an assumption that you can make here. Anybody who's obsessed with numbers and knows the numbers inside out the way that I do could not possibly be stupid enough to go and risk money in a casino. Well, I'm saying that's bollocks, but that's a whole other conversation. So I'll wrap this up before I hit the 30 minutes. And if you've stayed with me throughout this presentation, thank you very much. And I will be putting another one up soon enough. Thanks. Bye. Well, I don't know about you, but I find this kind of disappointing. I was thinking it'd be somebody romantic and interesting, and I mean, I'm sure that Dan Cook is an absolutely lovely guy, but he doesn't sort of like fit in with Damon Runyon or Studs Terkel or people like that. But and also, of course, this is not the only explanation that you'll find online for the existence of this expression. I mean, there are some really quite dirty versions of where it came from, all about sort of, never mind. Anyway, enjoy it.